Hi there. I guess it started. I'll start up my microphone as well. Been packing here to get ready to leave for Portugal and Spain, my trip. I wanted to do a video on the subject of reading. It has come up on my blog. It comes up every now and again for a variety of reasons. First of all, reading is a very effective way to improve your language skills in your own language or in a foreign language. Stephen Krashen, whom I often quote, believes that extensive silent reading is the most powerful way to learn a language or to improve in a language. I've had comments on my blog, John Fotheringham for one, Igor the Macedonian, all with slightly different perspectives, but nevertheless supporting the fact that reading is a very powerful way to improve your language skills. Now, reading comes up as well, not only as part of language learning, but as part of the whole discussion about literacy. And I posted in a comment to my blog some of the reports that are out there saying that 40% of the people certainly in the United States or Canada and perhaps other industrialized nations are functionally illiterate. But a lot of this comes from the sort of literacy advocate people, and I'm very skeptical about their numbers because I think the whole issue of who is functionally illiterate is really quite subjective, and the numbers can vary from 30% to 40% to 50% and so forth. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that there is a perception, and we hear this from university professors and others, that the graduates that are now entering university read less and less well. Now, again, it's common in human history for the present generation to consider that the older generation to consider that the younger generation is no good and stuff. So there's a little bit of that, certainly. But let's assume that we have a problem and that it's difficult to measure the problem, and different people will try to make point out that the scope of the problem can sometimes be difficult to grab, but the problem is probably quite large. And I do believe that the more literate you are, the better you use language, the better off you do socially, professionally, and so forth in our society. Now, for some people that may not matter. There are many people who are happily illiterate. They have a job that they can do, they're loving family members, have friends, and have a good time. But I think for a lot of people, it is possible to trace a correlation between low literacy, high unemployment levels, high incarceration rates, alcoholism, you name it. A lot of ills seem to be attached with low literacy levels. So it's probably a good thing to help people become better readers. Now, I have mentioned before that I've been on this listserv put out by the National Institute for Literacy or something, and a lot of the literacy teachers are more interested in social change than they are in teaching people how to read, and they're all caught up in the sort of ideology of pedagogy. In other words, literacy is a social construct, and really if someone can use text-to-speech, then we may be able to finesse the whole literacy issue altogether, and it's just another way for people with power in society to put other people down, and so all these kind of irrelevant things. I think the simple issue is that people do better in terms of what most people want to achieve in their lives. They do better if they can read well. I think that is probably true. So whose fault is it that so many people seem to be unable to read? And possibly we have more people unable to read now or to read well now than several generations ago. It's certainly partly the individual's fault. It's certainly to some extent a factor of the family environment. It's certainly possibly influenced by television and computer games. All of this is possible. But there's one thing to me that is inescapable, and that is that the schools have the kids for 5-6 hours a day, 5 days a week for 12 years. So if kids graduate from high school and cannot read, there is no escaping the responsibility of the school system. Whatever other factors can and do influence how well someone reads. If I have someone in my charge for 12 years, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I can also assign homework to that person, assign tasks to that person, watch what they're doing, help them, correct them, do whatever, and at the end of the day they can't read very well, that's my fault. You can't escape the responsibility of the school system. And I believe that the schools would be far better off if they allowed people to sit there and read silently than do what they now do, where teachers just prattle on about all kinds of stuff. I remember that from my school days. We don't know what he or she is saying half the time. We're more focused on fooling around. Unless the teacher captures our attention and our interest, they're into various social propagandas, save the whales, mommy has 2 parents, they're both men or both women, any of these things, which might be wonderful causes to promote, but we shouldn't be promoting these kinds of sort of values, however wonderful the teacher thinks they are, if the kids can't read. And to get people to read, let them read things that they are interested in. I think that has to be a major part of it. And when I read on these literacy listservs about teachers who are going to impose this poetry because they thought it's so wonderful, and then they're going to ask the class what they thought of it and whether they can explain it and stuff, and all of that just destroys reading. And Krashen has said it, that the sort of reading strategies approach leads to poorer reading. And if we can somehow provide kids with reading opportunities, provide them with books, encourage them, let them read, all of this should lead to better reading. The other thing I wanted to, let's see, what was there? The other issue with reading, of course, insofar as language learning is concerned, is this debate we've had about graded readers. And Igor in Macedonia, and I don't, by the way, Igor, think that everybody in Macedonia is a shepherd. I don't think that you sit on the hillside and blow and play your flute while the sheep wander around, otherwise you wouldn't be on the internet. But he's a very strong Krashenite. All you need to is read, and therefore graded readers are very important. I believe that if you can help grade the material for people, that's fine. And to some extent we do that at Link because we measure the unknown words, we measure difficulty based on different criteria. But the main thing is the interest. And if a person is interested in the subject, they will fight their way through difficult content. And if the person is not interested, it doesn't matter how simple the text is. He's not communicating, because you have to engage the emotions of the learner. And every time I have seen graded readers, which I found for Russian, simple Russian stories written by someone about, Sasha, whose friend arrives from Germany and they visit Leningrad and here's this and that monument. I have no interest in that whatsoever. No matter how interesting they try to make it, it's not real. It's not something that a Russian person wrote for a Russian person. So, on the other hand, as I've said, we now have the ability to record conversations and then transcribe them. And they will tend to have less difficulty in terms of vocabulary use. And so there are a number of strategies that you can use in order to keep it interesting and yet keep it accessible to the learner. Graded readers, as in the Penguin readers, simplified versions of Robinson Crusoe, I've never been a fan of, but I've nothing against those, and let other people do them. I prefer to have a lot of new words, and that's one of the reasons we developed Link, so that you don't have to look up every third word. It's almost there for you as you're reading through it. You have an opportunity to work the words and phrases. And I do believe, contrary to Krashen, that some degree of vocabulary study, I've said it, 5-10% max, no more than that, and some degree of output, not necessarily in the early stages, but later on, more and more output, so you can start to notice what you're missing. Because through your reading, you get in a groove. Certain things you just don't notice. Until you start to use the language, and then you make certain mistakes, and now you can start looking for those things and you start to notice better. So I've rambled a bit on reading. I'm going to run out of time here. I'm heading off to Portugal and Spain. We'll see if I can do any more of these later on. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.